Welcome to How Brands Are Built, where branding professionals get into the details of what they do and how they do it. I'm your host, Rob Meyerson. Thanks for listening. Today's episode is brought to you by Squad Help, the world's #1 naming platform. Andjelic is a strategy executive with wide-ranging experience on the agency and client sides. Recent roles include Chief Brand Officer at fashion retailer Rebecca Minkoff and SVP Global Strategy Director at Havas LuxHub. Anna also has a PhD in sociology and has published dozens of articles about luxury and fashion branding, the experience economy, social influence, content strategy, and more. In 2018, she was listed by Forbes as one of the top 50 chief marketers who serve as models of a new, emerging, and disruptive chief marketer. I asked Anna about her PhD, why she chose to pursue it, and how it's impacted her career, what she means by social currency, and how she defines brand experience. You'll get to hear about her 4 C's of the modern brand, and she lists a ton of examples of disruptive brands she's keeping an eye on. Without further ado, here's Anna Andjelic on How Brands Are Built. Anna Andjelic, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So Anna, I've talked to a lot of brand strategists on this show and of course in my career, but I don't think I've talked to any, or at least not too many, who have a PhD in sociology. So I looked at your bio a little bit. It looks like you were already working in branding or marketing or advertising when you got that PhD. So I'm curious, what motivated you to pursue the PhD in the first place? And now, how do you feel like that academic experience influences what you do?
Right. Well, I think that I'm actually the only one with a PhD.
There we go.
It's a good thing or a bad thing. It definitely, it's definitely a unicorn situation. And the reason I started doing PhD, I came here, moved in 2001 to New York, and I did my master's in media studies, and then I went on to study sociology of innovation and get a PhD in that. And my dissertation was on digital branding, but I was mostly interested then in how digital technologies and technology overall changes branding practices, how brands are built, what modern brand building means, and then also how you organize innovation. Can you organize innovation? What are innovative organizations? How do they look like? How people and technology interact? How innovations are adopted in society and all of that. And of course, all of those topics we're talking about like 13 years ago or more, when I was studying that. And only now, first, we are seeing some of that focus on systems, design systems, innovative organizations, and so on. So that was a very relevant topic for understanding what is going on in terms of brands and technology.
Would you say that you pursued the PhD out of, it sounds like obviously a lot of it is personal curiosity and a passion for learning and understanding. Was there also some commercial aspect of it, sort of? Did you feel that this would help you differentiate yourself in your career, or that it would help you just give better advice to clients that would help them build their brands?
Right. It was mostly passion for learning and knowledge. And also I wanted to sort of be set for life in terms of like doing different things. I never want to have my role become obsolete. And
right.
So that is, I can do a number of different things. If everything else fails, I can go and teach, So it's in once you have that inquisitive mind, once you have a lot of education and a lot of knowledge, you're pretty much set to have a number of careers, which I actually did. I follow my curiosity and then I build a career out of it.
Right. I've read a few articles that you've written, and some of them mention terms that as a non-sociology PhD, I'm not that familiar with. So things like social currency, and you've written about the idea of brands hacking culture. So I don't want to go too deep into the academic world and turn this into some kind of lecture, but is there a quick way to explain what you mean when you say social currency and why you think brand strategists and brands should be worried about it?
Yeah, of course. And there is going to be nothing academic about it because these are, I don't think, academic terms. When you think about hacking subculture is coming from a growth hacking methodology, which means how do you can acquire and retain users by designing products and services in such a way that encourages interaction, sharing, word of mouth, and so on. So social currency is a result of social activity, basically. So like think about your Instagram. If you post very often, if your content is really great, if you interact with your audience and your followers, you're going to have more of that following. So you're building your social currency. And modern brands today, like say Away Luggage or Casper or Tracksmith, the running, they sort of built their brands on the top of something that their audience is already passionate about, which is travel or running. And then when you think about it, what is the social activity in those communities? There are always those who are more active. They have more social currency. In a sense, they talk more, they maybe travel more, they share more. So for us as brand strategists, we don't need to only design the brands, but we need to design for social influence. How is this social influence going to spread? What kind of social influence you want to implement? What kind of community you want to have? And what is the social currency in that community going to be? That means the core unit that is exchange. Is it content? Is our personal experiences? Is it going running together? Are those activities? So that is something that we need to think about in terms of systems and in terms of what is the core currency in that system? What is important for people to talk about?
And are there frameworks or methodologies that you use to think about social currency in a really systematic way? I mean, are there a discrete number of types of social currency that you could identify or that anybody's tried to identify?
No, it's not. It's not a specific it's not a specific methodology. You just need to be mindful of the fact that you're going to have fans. And ideally you will have fans. Right. So are you going to give those fans something to do and talk about? Are you going to build your brand upon their already existing conversation? That means how do you hack growth? How do you hack culture? What is the subculture or niche that's already happening? Like when you have with the Supreme, those are sneakerheads. The brand emerged from that niche. Right. When you look who is the most passionate when you think about Glossy, the brand, who is the most passionate and most active on her blog? That was the initial community. And then she said, I have a lot of social currency being exchanged here. I'm going to use it to inform my product, but I'm also going to use it to build the brand and the way how I communicate, which is built upon already existing communities. So if there is any sort of social currency or any methodology in terms related to it, I would say, look who are your most passionate users in the same or customers in terms of the area of life or passion or interest or values that your brand wants to put forward.
Yeah. And it seems like a lot of your advice revolves around this idea of not attempting to create your own subculture from scratch. And I don't know if maybe some brands sort of make that mistake of thinking they're powerful enough to do that. But if I'm correct, some of the things you've written are about being a good listener and paying attention and identifying the subcultures that already exist that align with your brand and sort of tapping into that. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. The easiest example is when you think about Patagonia. That's the culture of social responsibility. And they're tapping into those who care about the great outdoors, but above all, they care about how to curb climate change and about environmental responsibility. Because if there is a climate crisis, there is no outdoors, Right. Sort of how do you tap into that passion and say, hey, don't buy this jacket, basically just repair your jacket or exchange and so on. So everything that brand does is really aligned in terms of values with what their audience considers important, and then every single part of that brand experience is sort of delivering on it.
Let's talk about brand experience. You just used the term. Do you have a working definition, or what does it mean to you to say brand experience?
Well, for me, brand experience, for start, it's every single relationship that the brand has either within its products and services or interfaces, packaging, physical locations, people, customer service, and all of that. And that is delivered to customers that enforces the brand promise. So it's, for me, brand experience, it's a relationship you are building with your customers, but also in the system that's made up of product, services, and everything I mentioned.
So is brand experience in your mind different from customer experience, which we hear a lot of agencies talking about now, and then also user experience, which of course we hear on sort of the more technology side of things? Or are those terms interchangeable, or do you distinguish between them somehow?
I don't think I think that brand experience, that customer and user experience are one of the expressions of the brand experience.
Okay.
Other expressions of brand experience are product, services, people, again, physical location, interfaces. Because when you think about how design has evolved from products to experience to service to systems, and then something needs to keep it all together. So that's what I wanted to go back to and say brands really first, in order to have a compelling and consistent experience, they need a clear and strong brand promise.
Right. And you used the phrase North Star in one of your articles, which, of course, I've heard before, but brand becomes that guiding star that maybe the user experience and the customer experience and every other sort of aspect of the brand can line up to.
Absolutely. And for me, it's like product development and brand development are not separate practices.
Right.
In that sense, the first step in designing your brand experience overall, every single how are people going, what kind of relationship you want to put forward, is to really define that brand promise. Why does the brand exist in the world? What is the role of the brand in this world? Who is it? What value it adds to a specific activity or part of life? And then in this experiential context, brand promise is going to define what is the core value that's exchanged, the core value that this experience provides, and make it as clear, visible, feasible, desirable as possible. So, for example, Rafa, high-end cycling brands, they believe that cycling makes everyone's lives better. That's good for the planet, that's good for the people, that's good for humans. So their core value is make it easier for people to jump on a bike and cycle and have a fantastic experience. So whatever they do comes from that core promise, that core value that they put, the value proposition that they're putting forward.
Right.
Or when you think about outdoor voices, they're all about making exercise fun. They're not about like, competitiveness or running until you throw up or anything. They just like exercise fun. So everything from their call to action, which is doing things, hashtag, to their community, to their content, and above all their products, delivers on this fun aspect of moving or doing things, of exercising.
I want to talk about technology a little bit more. I know it's another area of expertise for you, media and technology specifically. Big picture, what are some of the changes that you're seeing or trends that you're watching? And then I'm also curious about the flip side of that. You know, as technologies change and there are new social media platforms and other things, what are some of the universals that you think will always remain true despite these sort of new bells and whistles that marketers have available to them?
Right. Well, the answer to the first question of technology is really, for me, algorithms changed a lot of the landscape, because algorithms, by definition, they commodify products and services. So they turn products and services into commodities. By their very definition, they're like you type into Google white t-shirt or on Amazon, and you get whatever algorithm sends you. What is the most popular? What is the most reviewed? What is I don't know, the closest to your location, or what is the most aligned with what you bought in the past? So that has nothing to do almost with the brand. It's the opposite of the brand. So these days, the strength of the brand is how successfully it can defy the algorithm. So I'm not looking for the white t-shirt, I'm looking for the white Muji t-shirt, because I believe in that the brand and Muji t-shirts are better than others and anything else. So that is sort of the difference. And in order to survive the attack of the algorithm, brands, for me, need to have one of the 4 C's, how I call them. Either very strong content, that people gravitate towards? Are there a vibrant community? They're going to keep buying, keep identifying with the brand, wanting to belong to that community. Either be very strong in curation, or collaborate, or kind of dial up on collaborations, collaborate with other brands to create collectible products.
And you mentioned curation quickly, but can you just explain that one a little bit more, what you mean by that?
Yes, the brands that are sort of either battling reverse network effects. That means you don't want to be part of the club that everyone can join. That means how do you create sort of a tiered program? Influencers are curators, for example. Or one example is how Adidas created their creators club when customers who are passionate about the brand are the first one who find out about new product releases or give feedback on new product designs and so on. So curation means everything that the brand does to sort of put culture and zeitgeist and conversations through its own brand filter.
Okay.
So, for example, Goop brand filter is wellness. Outdoor Voices, when we went back, the filter is fun and exercise. So there may be recipes, there may be movies, there may be, magazine articles, but it's always through the brand filter. That's curation.
This episode, an entire season of How Brands Are Built, is brought to you by SquadHelp, the world's #1 naming platform. Here's how SquadHelp works. You launch a naming contest to engage hundreds of naming experts. You're guided through an agency-level naming process that goes beyond traditional crowdsourcing. The platform uses AI and includes name validation features such as audience testing, trademark validation, linguistic analysis, and quality scoring. And SquadHelp doesn't just do naming. You can also use their platform for taglines or slogans, as well as logo design. To launch your naming contest today, go to squadhelp.com and start receiving custom name suggestions instantly. SquadHelp, company, brand, and business name ideas by experts. This episode is also brought to you by Rev.com, offering fast, affordable, accurate audio transcription and captions. I've used Rev a million times to transcribe episodes of this podcast and also for recorded interviews that I've conducted during brand strategy projects for clients. I've tried a few other services and I keep coming back to Rev because their transcriptions are the most accurate I've seen, their turnaround time is less than 24 hours, and transcriptions cost just $1 a minute. Right now, Rev is offering listeners of this show $10 off your first order. To get your $10 off coupon, visit rev.com/blog/HBAB for How Brands Are Built. Again, that's rev.com/blog/HBAB. Rev, transcriptions made simple. Today's episode is also brought to you by Audible. For listeners of How Brands Are Built, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/HBAB for How Brands Are Built. Again, that's audibletrial.com/HBAB to get your free audiobook. Now, back to Anna Andjelic on How Brands Are Built. And then those 4 C's that you mentioned, the way you phrased it, they're ways of defying the algorithm. I'm just curious about that way of positioning it. Is there a way of thinking of the algorithm as something that brands need to sort of work with instead of working against? Or is it just, are those two sides of the same coin?
Well, I think that today's retail environment in particular is very deeply shaped by algorithms. And it's also like media environment is shaped by algorithms. And it's like almost everything we do and what we see on social media, on Netflix, streaming services is defined by algorithm. So I think in that context, you don't want to be caught in that commodification machine as a brand. You don't want to be offered as one of options. You want to be the option. In order for you to be the option, that's the way, those 4 C's are for me the way to create a relationship with your audience. That is strong enough, that's intimate enough, that's human enough, that they're not going to go on Google and be like, give me a white t-shirt. They're going to go directly to Muji and say, I'm going to buy the t-shirt here.
Right. I suppose it also puts a little more pressure on brands to try to do something that I think they've always tried to do, which is own a category or define or create a new category. So what comes to mind, you mentioned Patagonia earlier, but if somebody wants to buy one of those puffy jackets that they're so famous for, you could imagine someone Googling Patagonia jacket or Patagonia style jacket instead of, I don't know, puffy jacket or something. They've almost sort of cornered the market, or I mean, everybody makes one now, but it's so well associated with their brand that maybe they have I would guess that they have a big advantage there.
Absolutely. That was like white t-shirt, white Muji t-shirt, exactly what. Yeah.
Right. We talked a lot about some fashion brands here, and that's, of course, because that's a lot of your expertise and experience is in fashion and luxury. I'm curious, do all of these things that we've talked about and all of the 4 C's and everything that you've mentioned, do you think they apply equally well in other spaces? So value brands, B2B brands, corporate brands. Is it sort of the same 4 C's maybe, but they just apply a little differently? Or are there completely different rules of the road when you're talking about these other industries?
I think there is a lot that all industries can learn from luxury industry, which is above all having that impeccable, well-considered end-to-end customer service. And then that flexible, anticipatory, one step ahead way of building a relationship. So I think that's everywhere where humans deal with each other. That's absolutely relevant. B2B, B2C, you name it. And I think that sort of seamlessness of the customer journey is something that every brand can learn from luxury. Then the level of personalization, and then sort of like human intimacy when you use data to behave like a butler, not like a stalker. So that is, so that is something that all brands can learn from. It's not like hate selling. Hey, if you don't buy this now, 15 other people are looking, or like, you have 5 minutes to make a decision. It's not about that. It's like, oh, you like this. How was your purchase? Let me know if I can do anything else. There's a lot of like concierge-like services that where we can see a lot of in retail and that we can see more of. Yeah.
And did you refer to the opposite as hate selling? Is that what you said?
Yes, hate selling. That means like,
I love that.
This now or like next 15 minutes. 55 other people are looking at the same property, the same date,
Right, the fear-based.
Like the panic-based, like hate-based buying instead of being like, oh, we noticed that you're looking this rental these properties, like, why don't you like consider this? How can we help? Or blah, blah,
I'm jumping around here a little bit between technology and luxury, but I realized I want to go back and ask another sort of technology or almost Silicon Valley-centric question. You've written a little about startups that are paying a lot of attention to product design, which, of course, in Silicon Valley is sort of the focus, right? It's all about the product. But you've said that some of them have done that almost too much, or they've sacrificed a focus on brand and experience. So what kind of mistakes are you describing when you talk about that?
I think it's less of mistakes than just like later trying to retrofit your product into what you want your brand to be. So that goes back to what I said about the core brand promise, because when you think about what Airbnb has done early on is they put forward belong anywhere, and that sort of became a binding principle for the relationship between hosts and guests. And no matter now what you think about over tourism and so on, that in terms of brand building, they defined what their brand is about even before the first interface or the first way that you're booking something. So you start from your user experience, from that human experience, and you think, what value my brand adds here? And then your product is one of the expressions of the value that you deliver. Because in modern economy, products are not core value units. They're services and experiences. When you think about what Casper, the mattress company, is doing. They say we want to be Nike of sleep. They say we are not in the business of selling mattresses. We are in the business of making you sleep better. So mattresses is one way to deliver that promise. But now they have CBD gummies, and they probably have playlists or content, or they have like events in their stores when you have Ariana Huffington talking about slowing down and unplugging and so on. So everything they do across the entire product, service, packaging, delivery, physical properties, customer service ecosystem is to make you sleep better. So when you just focus on making a great product, or not that great, but like when you focus on making a product like maybe Farfetch, or if you remember Groupon, that's an example. You over-index on creating a product, and then you're like, well, what's my go-to-market strategy? I have product market fit, but how am I going to put this product in people's hands? How are we going to attract people to use it? And then very, very often, then companies resort to just buying Facebook ads and spending unbelievable amount of money to acquire customers, and they lose them as quickly because they don't have that sort of brand promise first, brand experience approach by defining the business they are in.
Great. I want to talk a little bit about sort of how you do what you do. So if a client comes to you, or if you're hired by a company that says, Anna, we want your help creating an incredible brand experience for our customers, where do you start? I mean, I know this is a big question, but is there any kind of methodology or steps that you take consistently that you could speak to?
Well, I mean, I think that, again, going back to that brand promise, it's always like, what is the role of your brand in the world? What is that value proposition that is the core of exchange between you and your customers? How are you making their lives better? So that's once you define that promise by looking at what are the values of the company first, then you're looking what is happening in culture, what are the conversation. Is wellness important right now, and self-care, and maybe unplugging and slowing down, or you know, what is travel, like what is important in culture right now? What is that conversation? Then you look again, and what is the category doing, or where do the best practices come from? Maybe they come outside of category, and then why? And then you have the final one is like, what is your product? Like, how do you want to build a system around that product? How are you going to build a relationship around that product? How can you add value?
And you mentioned, I suppose, the 4 C's. So maybe that's a place that you would start to look. So once you've defined that promise and you've done kind of all your information gathering about culture, and you're actually just saying, okay, well, what are we going to do tomorrow to start building this brand experience around this promise and this subculture that we've identified? Do you then look to content and curation and all 4 C's, or is there another way of kind of organizing yourself to just ensure that you've done everything you can to build a great brand experience?
Well, I look at it from in terms of 3 layers, you know, and the first one is strategic. It's like, how does this experience move the business and the brand forward? Does it move the business, and how is it going to help this company make money? How is it going to advance its brand? Then the second one is creative. Does it convey the brand message in a convincing, differentiated way? Is it surprising and delightful to customers? Is it seamless enough? Are they going to enjoy it? And then from organizational perspective, what are the right processes? What are the right human and technological resources that you need to implement this experience? How does your company need to be organized in order to successfully deliver this experience in a way that you make money and delight customers?
You've mentioned a few brands throughout the conversation, and it's also really clear from your writing, by the way, that you have some sort of favorites. You write about Away a lot and a few other brands. Is there anything that you haven't mentioned, any brands that you feel like do an incredible job just at sort of everything in terms of branding, but especially around creating a brand experience that's consistent and fits with their promise and does all of the things that you feel brands should be doing?
Right. Well, I wouldn't say that I have favorites. I'm just interested and attracted to brands that are inventing new practices. So if some brand, it can be from insurance or healthcare or whatever, if they're doing something in a new way that has a big promise to become a new branding practice, I'm going to be interested in that. Mm-hmm. All of that said, I would say that all brands that have experiences that are consistent and that clearly convey and deliver brand promise are strong brands, and they can go from Goop to Disney to Casper, to Emirates, to Upper House in Hong Kong, to Net-a-Porter. All of those that sort of either apply the 4 C's. They have a very strong content that delivers value even before the product has been purchased. They have a very strong and vibrant community like Rafa or Tracksmith again, or they have a very clear aesthetic point of view and like Muji, for example, and that's Muji is very rooted in Japanese life, the minimalism and simplicity of Japanese aesthetics and lifestyle. And so when Japanese started traveling more, Muji opened the hotel. So for me, that's a great example of how do you expand your brand beyond your core business to still deliver what your promise is, what your expertise is in.
A couple of wrap-up questions here. You're a very prolific writer. I'm curious what you're reading. Are there books or articles that you've read recently or even in the distant past that really influenced your way of thinking about brands and how you do what you do?
I do read a lot, but I never read anything that's marketing or strategy or brand planning. I usually read sociology texts, or organizational studies or behavioral economics or design thinking or, just other areas. And then I think how I can apply those that information, those learnings into what I do. And I found very useful value proposition canvas with same strategizer who made the business model canvas. So I find value proposition more relevant for building a modern brand regarding the fact that we are talking about building the relationship and putting forward the way to improve one's experience, one's lifestyle, and so on. Then I like also this is service design thinking. That's the title of the book, which talks about how to design different touch points where company and their customers meet beyond just the usual ones. And then I also like the brand balance books. I don't know if you're familiar. That's a series of little booklets. If you like, there's a combination between book and a magazine that explores what iconic brands have done right. So, for example, Aesop or IKEA or, Shinola, they're all featured there, and they're sort of deep dive into the brand aesthetics, identity, and then the brand expression. So they're called the brand balance books. Yeah.
Oh, those sound great.
Yeah.
Is there anything on the sociology side that you feel like business people and branding people should read that's somewhat accessible, not a textbook, but anything that you've seen or read that you might recommend to people that are interested in sociology and how it impacts branding?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that above all, I would recommend reading behavioral economics, which sits between economics and sociology, that teaches us that humans are not rational creatures and that how much context influences our decision making and how design of that context influences our decision making. Think about how addictive social media ads are now. They're designed to be like that. Or how when you go to a supermarket, you're almost the basic stuff is all the way in the back. So, so I would say behavioral economics for sure.
I've talked to other interviewees about Dan Ariely and I think Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow are two behavioral economics authors that are pretty well known. Are there others that you're familiar with or that you would recommend?
Yeah, there is a Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. They're the ones that are the fathers almost of the discipline. So I would say read Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. And then I like to read, there is entire school of sociology, core science and technology studies, which explores how design of technology impacts how people use it. And that's Bruno Latour. That may be a little more academic read, but it's still very much worth looking into.
Great. So last question, any advice for junior people or people that are interested in getting into the world of branding?
I overall believe that people need to think more overall. They just, they're too trusting of ideas or they just adopt ideas without critical thinking. So I think whatever can inspire junior people or advance their critical thinking aspect, I would advise that. And then overall, I cannot underscore the importance of observation and sort of being very aware that one's own perspective is limited. So that means travel, expose yourself to other cultures, observe how people behave, observe obstacles, how they overcome obstacles in their behavior, and then, just be very open and very critical of not critical as in negative, but very questioning of that established way of doing things.
It's great advice, and it tracks with your background as a sociologist. Sounds like very sociology-oriented advice, but it makes perfect sense for anyone doing branding or marketing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. I really appreciate your time today, and hope to chat again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to How Brands Are Built. If you like the episode, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's an easy way to support the show and help others find out about it. To learn more about Anna, visit her website at andjelicaa.com. That's AndjelicAA.com. Or you can just Google her. She's pretty easy to find. In the episode write-up, I'll share links to her LinkedIn and Medium profiles, as well as other social media accounts, in addition to a full transcript of the conversation. One quick PSA. Did you know you can find some free downloadable naming tools on the How Brands Are Built website? There's a naming brief template, a master list template, and 2 free ebooks. Just visit howbrandsarebuilt.com and look for resources, downloads at the top of the screen. I hope you'll check that out. How Brands Are Built is a production of Heirloom Agency, LLC. Our theme music is by Isha Erskine Project. I'm Rob Meyerson, and I'll talk to you next time.